So welcome to the KeySet Insider Series, Conversations with Inspirational Leaders. And today we're talking to Amita, Krishna, who has been in business for 29 years now, running several businesses, and has just launched a new business, Idea Connect, going into Malaysia, which has been supported by the Minister from Malaysia, which is a great significance for you in that. So, Amita, I'd love to know where this all started, this business success. Tell me about it.
Thank you very much, Jenny. The business really started 29 years ago in terms of businesses, and I guess it probably goes back even further than that. I was born in East Africa, as we've discussed, and my parents had a number of businesses. So there was a shop and a spice and flour mill. So I was brought up in a household where dinner table conversations really were about bringing products in, what was working well, what the profits looked like. And as a child, we all helped. We used to stack shelves. We used to be quite naughty as well at times and go into the mill and try and mix different spices, obviously to my father's discontent. And then we left in 1972 when Idi Amin kicked out all the Asians. So I guess the essence and the spirit of businesses is really being inbred from a very young age. But my first real business was actually set up in 1989, 88, 89, when I graduated from Coventry Lancaster Poly, which
we discovered.
And it's a great polytechnic.
Yes.
And it was really, I'd come to London, I didn't know anyone, and I applied for a job in the Evening Standard, which was a management trainee, £20,000. And I thought that was a lot of money, those days, and I thought, I'm going to go and earn this money, and I'm going to get this job. So I went through a series of 4 interviews, and I got the job, so I was delighted. Little did I know that it actually wasn't quite what it was supposed to be. So I slogged my guts out for, a month. I used to go in every single morning, be there by 8:30, 9:45. Used to make cold calls from Yellow Pages because I didn't know anyone. And in essence, the business was actually selling life assurance, loans, financing, giving corporate advice. So I must have done about 30 meetings every single week. And at the end of the month, I asked the manager, so do you want my bank details so you can put my salary in? So they said to me, what salary? I said, well, I've worked all month. What do you mean, what salary? So we haven't sold anything. I said, what do you mean I haven't sold anything? I came to work, it's a management trainee, you're supposed to train me, I'm supposed to earn money. And in essence, it was really being self-employed under your own company, and it was commission only.
Tough.
Very tough. Yeah.
And I guess that taught you an awful lot, really. It sounds like it did. The cold calling. Everybody starting a business has to do cold calls. How's that?
You're absolutely right. It did teach me an awful lot. And cold calling is probably something everyone dreads. And we didn't really know any better. I mean, the team that were there, you were given Yellow Pages. If you didn't know anyone, and you just went through the Yellow Pages, and I learned very quickly it was a numbers game, because you start understanding your ratios. So I knew that every 10 people I called, I would probably get through to 6, and out of every 6, at least 1 would say yes. So I started getting into the mindset of, okay, it's a no, it's a no, it's a no. Eventually there'll be a 1 yes out of these 6 or 8. I think the hardest one was door knocking. We used to actually go door knocking, and it was, looking back, it was terrible. But if I hadn't gone through those things, I would never have succeeded in business.
It's quite amazing, actually, because it takes me back, because when I first started out, when I was a student, still at Lancaster, and it was a summer job, and we were door knocking to sell encyclopedias. The most terrible thing in London, in Tottenham Court Road, to try and sell, it was horrific. So just, we start from so many different places, don't we? But we build on, it's all learning, and I think that's so important for younger people who are growing, or anyone starting out a business. You just have to keep going and be determined. and get there and just learn from it. And your cold calling, I think you did say to me once that you really just had to set the targets and keep going and just keep going till you got your targets. Yeah. And that's what helped you to get over cold calling, because it's not easy.
You're right, it's not easy, and I think in some ways the targets were set for us. So unless you actually got 5 appointments by 12:30 or 1 o'clock that day, which meant you had to make at least 100 calls. And if you didn't get those, you couldn't go out. And you know, it seemed a bit of a tyranny looking back, because you're self-employed, nobody's going to pay you unless you sell. If you're not in the office by 9 o'clock, you would have to pay £1 fine.
Oh wow.
Because our office used to overlook a very famous retail store, and there was always a queue outside. And you know, the manager used to say, see, if your doors are not open by 9 o'clock, those people are going to go somewhere else. So, you know, because you don't know any better, you're a young, impressionable graduate, you think, well, this is how the world runs. But it, you know, it could have been a lot different. But you know what, Jenny, I'm really, really glad I went through that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think everyone should go through an element of it.
It's a school of hard knocks. Yeah. You have to go through it, and even though it's tough at the time and you might resent it or whatever, it teaches you such a lot to go through that. And I think one thing I'm hearing from that is to have focus, to set yourself goals, although those were set by somebody else. But in starting out, I'm just coaching another young guy starting another business, and believe it or not, he didn't actually have goals set for his first year. You know, and first 2 or 3 years. And I think if you've got some kind of plan, some kind of focus, it can help you keep going when the going gets tough. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I totally agree with that. I think it's when the going gets tough, those goals are even more important.
Yeah.
Because we all lose our way.
Yeah.
Something else will come along. Life throws curveballs. And it's just sort of like saying, right, being single-minded. No matter what, I'm going to achieve this.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go for it wholeheartedly and give it my best shot.
Yes, and you know, you have one day, and one day things may work, and another day, or they may not work. But you just have to get out of bed again the next morning.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So tell me about how you now got, I think, 6 businesses you're running. So how did that evolution happen for you to be running those?
Okay, so the evolution happened in. Is it okay if I chunk it?
Sure. Yeah.
It's easier for me to explain. So I call them like the early years, which were the days of cold calling, you know, going out on your own. I mean, when the crisis happened, when, you know, interest rates shot up to 21%, 89, I think it was actually 87 I started, lost track of time. In 89, I was doing a lot of loans for Arabs, and properties were being undervalued. So I wasn't really earning the type of money that I was used to, even in those few years. So I thought, like, what do I know? I knew computing, because that's what I did at Coventry, and I had obviously learned how to sell. So I thought, let me go in to see if I can get projects selling computer system, and desktop publishing was a big thing at that time. So I sort of like took on, you know, 6-month projects. So really the early years were all about learning the core skills of business, marketing, selling, you know, the tenacity, the resilience, then looking at projects, which sort of like meant you focused on outcomes again. So nobody's ever really paid me a salary, apart from, you know, 1 or 2 recent projects I've done. But they've all been, if the money is there, then yes, you can take the money. If it isn't, go out and earn it. So the early years, and then I call them like the discovery years, where I made a lot of mistakes, because you become a little bit more confident. When you're used to earning good daily rates, you start being a bit choosy about, oh, I don't want to do this, oh, I know I can do this, especially because most of my business was by referrals.
Yes.
So you sort of like think, okay, yes, I'm okay, I'm good, I can be in demand. So those discovery years, you take on things and be a little bit complacent that business will always be there.
Yeah, and this was work as a consultant, really, financial services consultant, an IT consultant?
It was actually strategy, IT, research, different things, all business related, all to do with the growth of the business. But again, if I go back, I think understanding numbers really helped. I mean, I'm no financial wizard, believe me, and it's probably the one thing I think, oh my God, you know, I really have to look at these numbers, but it's the numbers.
Yeah.
for me, that a life or death.
Yes.
That will
I think we talked about passion when we've had a conversation before. We talked about people start a business because they have a passion for something, but you always have to be wary or aware of the numbers. Yeah. Make sure the money stacks up.
Yes, and we did have a bit of a giggle last time when I sort of like said, people talk about passion, and I think don't get me wrong, the passion is very important. However, for me personally, I follow the money. Mainly because if I'm not making money, I'm going to have to find another passion until I've made all the money that will enable me to do the things that I want. To me, money is about choices.
Yes.
It's not the monetary value that I actually chase. It's the fact that having that financial ability to have the choices in life and make the difference and the impact I really want to. That's what matters to me the most.
Yeah. I think that's a really important thing to acknowledge, actually, that it's not giving you power in a nasty kind of way. It's giving you the ability to have choice. Yeah.
And life to me is about choices.
Yeah.
So that's important.
Yeah. Okay. So you started out as a kind of management consultant, and were developing what you thought to be a consultancy practice. Yeah. But I remember you had a bit of an awareness at one stage where someone was saying, well, actually, you're not really running a consultancy practice. You're a consultant, but you're not running a business. So tell me a bit more about that.
There was there have been certain instances in those early years whereby, again, it goes back to the daily rates. It's a very different thing from being a business to being an entrepreneur to being a sole consultant. And even now, I probably weave in and out of all three. For Asia, I actually probably have put my business hat on with the entrepreneurial aspect. So they are established businesses, established products, which I'm then taking into new markets and being innovative and creative and taking a big risk to actually get those into the markets there. But going back to the consultancy, and yes, somebody did actually say to me, well, it is you. And it was in those days, and I have employed people, and I actually grew a practice in the UK, and I built a practice in Malaysia as well. And that was probably one of the hardest things that I've done, because I didn't know anyone. I was doing 2 weeks in the UK, 2 weeks in Malaysia, and they're 8,000 miles apart, and time difference and different cultures, and it was really challenging.
Yeah. What helped you in growing business in Malaysia? Because I know you do quite a lot overseas now.
Yes.
And what helps you in doing that?
So, in terms of assisting me with businesses in Asia, it's being able to spot the opportunity. So, and actually doing something about it. A lot of people will have ideas, they'll spot opportunities, and they'll talk about it till kingdom come. I've got to a stage in my life, earlier when I was saying, I'll chunk the three aspects of how the businesses have grown. The early years, the discovery years, and now I'm in accelerated growth mode. So for me now, I've learned a lot of lessons. I've had many failures. There's been so many things I've tried, and I've sat on the curb in Indonesia, just crying and thinking, nobody understands my accent, nobody understands what I'm saying, and all I want to do is pay my phone bill. That's all I wanted to do. And there have been, times when I had the office here and in Malaysia, and I thought, oh my God, what have I done? Because you have to juggle the money constantly. But what really helps me is knowing that I will be able to do all the things I've always wanted to do in my life, as long as I use, firstly, my network.
Yes.
Using my network wisely. Secondly, understanding the culture. Understand the lay of the land. Understand the consumers. Be respectful. Every country I've been to, I always want to give something back. I'm a firm believer in karma. So for me, you've been given an opportunity. If you don't give back, the life cycle has its own way of teaching you its lessons. Thirdly is the time factor. So certain of the Asian and ASEAN countries, things take so much longer to happen. So not giving up. So understanding, regulation will take, to register a product, it will take 12 months. And if it doesn't happen in those 12 months, give it another 3 months and get out.
Mm-hmm.
So I have actually dropped businesses, knowing when to let go. I think as women,
Mm-hmm.
we don't want to seem to fail, so we'll keep going on and
To
to
give the benefit of the doubt.
So I would say it's sort of like, those 3 key things, and making sure the numbers add up. If it doesn't make financial sense, don't do it.
The UK government wants us to be exporting a lot more. In doing that, what help have you had to try to help you to do that? Or what else could be in place to help you to do that?
Okay, that's a great question, because I think governments around the world need to acknowledge that small to medium enterprises are really the heartbeat of economies. And while a lot of it, there's research done, a lot of it is said, sometimes much of it can be lip service. And I'm not saying all of it is, but I think government actually need to take action. So 2 questions there. So the first one, what help have I had? Very little actually. I myself was part of a project, one of the projects I did, in assisting British SMEs export to Asia and Malaysia specifically. So I worked on that project for 12 months, and we did pretty well. We set it up and so on and so forth. What I'd like to say to government and what needs to be done is the following. Firstly, listen to the private sector. I think government has a fantastic role to play, and it's a very critical role in creating an environment and facilitating an environment which enables businesses to succeed.
Yes.
However, and that's policy, that's financial aid, that's foreign trade agreements, especially in light of Brexit, with the world out there, Commonwealth countries and beyond. Fourthly, is really listening to the private sector and getting them involved in actual implementation. Because the implementation in access to markets really should lie with the private sector. Whereas, there's a lot of government bodies which are involved, and the lines get blurred here and in overseas
So when
markets.
you say in private sector, are you meaning large corporates, are you meaning SMEs, or how would the government get involved with the private sector more?
I think it's both. I think the large corporates have a role to play, but I think listening more to the SMEs, because they're the ones that need more help.
Yeah.
Large corporates have the funds. They have bodies, they have resources, financial and non-financial, to go to different markets. They have a presence in many of those markets. SMEs are the ones taking the risk to actually go overseas, or even from north-south, to get their products and services into some of those different markets. And I'd say to government, stop signposting. There's a lot of, go here and they'll push you somewhere else, they'll push you somewhere else. But that absolute clarity in, firstly, what's available, making people aware. And it's not always just access to funds, that's one thing. Secondly, access to opportunities. So what opportunities exist and in what markets? Thirdly, what are the priorities? What's Britain really good at? And you've got, we've got gold standards, or the de facto standards for, you talk about creative industries, our lawyers, our accountants. There are some very good core competencies that Britain needs to leverage on.
Yes. Especially in science and technology. We say that we've got problems with that, but I've been going to loads of events recently, New Scientist Live and various things, Future Fest, and lots of different things happening. And there's lots of new technologies coming up, especially in the AI, the VR arenas and so on. And there's small, little organisations, little ideas. There's lots coming out of universities. Newcastle University is setting up something that I think it's funding something like about 10 projects a year from research projects. So it's turning research into reality. I think we need to be doing a lot more of that and connecting entrepreneurs with those research situations or whatever, those new ideas, a little bit more than we've suddenly got into lots of angel investors and all that kind of stuff. Not convinced that necessarily is the right way forward, but anyway, So a lot more to do there, and to take that creativity out across into different cultures across the world. But I'd like to come back because I started off asking you about the different businesses that you run, and I kind of stopped you in the middle, so apologies for that. But can we pick up on that?
Sure. The businesses are split up into three very clear areas. So there's the consulting side, which is really where I started from, and you can't help once you're an advisor or a consultant, you'll always look at life like that. So you'll always analyze the situation, look at the risk, look at the options, look at the numbers, and then sort of like move forward. The second business is really because there was a turning point in my life, as we all do. Life throws you curveballs, you know, get on with it. And that first business I had, the financial services practice, I remember the manager saying to me, if you're going to get depressed at 4 o'clock in the morning. Most of the people you know in your world will be asleep. Finish being depressed at 5 o'clock and get on with life. And I think that's a great way to look at it, because now, you know, sometimes I think, yeah, okay, you know, have my few sort of like little weeps and then get on with life. So because of a turning point about 2.5 years ago, I actually set up trade businesses. And the morning we met was one of the businesses that we set up. Now those are split into very clear segments. Listening to people, listening to successful people. There was a gentleman who I met about 10 years ago, and I used to share an office with him. And he actually got me to meet venture capital people in Egypt just before the 88 crash. And we may not have been sitting here having this conversation if that funding had gone through. And he always said to me, 3 things in life will always make you money. One is food.
Yes.
Second, food and drink. Second is health. People always need health. And the third is education. People don't have money, they will still educate their children. They will go and find money, make bills, borrow, steal, to make sure their children are educated. So that's always been at the back of my mind. So having dealt with a lot of British companies, and brand Britain carries a lot of weight, so we looked at health companies. So we set up a health organisation, importing alcohol-free sanitizers into some of the Asian markets. Then we looked at the education side. Again, British education in terms of training, online as well as otherwise, and student recruitment. So a lot of kids from the Middle East and from Africa actually use Malaysia as a gateway to look at British universities. And there's twinning programs, a lot of opportunities. And then the third area is food and drink. So it's actually more beverages that we're doing. So we're just about to review a lovely company which does bubbles. And we also have the rights to pink gin in some of the organisations. So that's really the trading aspect. And then obviously we've taken on the technology company, which really is a lifestyle opportunity, because we're looking at incorporating the technology into fashion, textiles, and the opportunities are endless. So the more we get into it, you know, the more we show the products to people, they're saying, well, do you think we could use it for this? But again, taking a step back, getting a product into market is not easy. There's regulation, there's marketing, there's understanding the consumer base, there's cross-border customs and tariffs that you have to be aware of. And then the third aspect of the businesses that I run is really private equity and investment. So again, brand Britain, a lot of Asian investors are looking at opportunities and assets in the UK market. And you mentioned Brexit earlier. Post-Brexit, and obviously, sadly, because our currency has suffered at the moment, you know, there are bargains in quotes to be had for overseas investors. So it's been quite busy over the last couple of
and it means that exports are cheaper, but imports, for our business, imports are more expensive, so it's more difficult, but
So that's really the businesses that are...
So you've got quite a diverse set of businesses there, haven't you? And I think, as you say, your consultancy skills probably help you do that, run those. But what I'm hearing running throughout is this really can-do attitude, and this the drive and determination that you keep on going. You're dogged, aren't you? and you keep going at business. You don't allow yourself to say no to yourself in a way. It's a funny thing to say, but a lot of women, the perception is that a lot of women don't really go into business or run many businesses, but in actual fact, they've got all the skills. They can, they can network. There's this issue about funding and can they manage funding and balance sheets and all that stuff, but they run households, so they can do that. And it's just having the courage to keep on having a go.
And yeah, you are right in terms of having the courage, and that comes from within.
Yeah.
And I think we as women don't give credit to ourselves, because women do run households, and basically if the numbers don't add up, you can't put food on the table if you take it down to that level. And that can-do attitude probably comes again from the upbringing, from being uprooted. I've been homeless twice. So we've lived in refugee camps, I've lived in a car, I've lost everything and I've rebuilt.
Yes.
So for me, when somebody says, oh, I really don't think I can do it, my view always is, how do you know until you've tried? If you try again, and if you really can't do it, then you can hand on heart say, look, I gave it my best shot and it really didn't work. When we were kids, when I was brought up in Bath, as siblings, we actually used to cover tennis balls. So tennis balls come raw, and then you're given these 2 green strips, and our thumbs used to be sore because we used to do it with forks, and we used to make bows for gifts. So they're just ribbons, and you're taught how to make gifts. We used to get half a pence for every single one. So we used to work together, and then towards the end of the year, we'd all have enough. I think it was £13 we made between 4 of us. But in those days, I bought a little Eskimo coat. My brother bought a bike, and I can't remember what my other 2 sisters bought. But having that faith in yourself and not being afraid to work hard.
Yes.
I think, if you work hard, you get smarter as the years go by, and that's why I talk about the accelerated and growth phase for me now. And having absolute clarity in what you want and what you don't want. And so I think it's equally important to say, I really don't want to do this, because all of this is to do with the choices we talked about.
Yes.
Because it's pointless being miserable. For me, I love what I do. I love that I do have different businesses, and I've taken many risks just in the last 24 months. And I came back from, after we met, I was flying off to Ghana, and some of the experiences we have are really surreal, because we're working with some government organisations there. So you've got outback riders and taking you to the tarmac and picking you up. The next day, we got back a few days later, I'm in Jakarta, and sitting in traffic for like about 3 hours, nearly missing my flight, and having a meeting in a Balinese-style venue by the swimming pool.
Yes, lovely.
Yeah. So every day is different. Every person you meet, I think it presents an opportunity.
Yeah.
Not to go out and say, let's do business together, but to learn.
I think that's a great thing about being an entrepreneur. Being an entrepreneur, I think, is being independent, really. You can grow big businesses or whatever, but it's about working for yourself. Yeah, there's nothing to beat it, really. There's hard times, and people can say, well, you're working all hours. But if you really love it, then it's in your mind anyway, and you're doing it. But it's so much nicer than having to be tied down and go into a corporate office and be there, sitting at a desk day in, day out, 9 to 5. Can't think of anything worse, personally, now. But you have such a smile on your face, and you've had it throughout this conversation. So I want to ask you a question which maybe, I don't know, but what's the best fun that you've had from doing what you do?
I think the best fun that I have had but there's lots of different, experiences I could talk about. But I think the best fun that I have actually had is the opportunity I had to go back to Uganda. And in fun in terms of, it was a whole mixture of emotions. And I actually, when the project was offered to me, it's a development project. So to go in and do a feasibility study on 250 hectares of land to turn it into a tech park. And why it was so much fun was, firstly, it gave me an opportunity to go back to my roots. And I've always wanted to go back, and I didn't think I was ready. And we always said we'd go back together because, you know, my parents are no longer around. Our siblings, we'd all go back together, go and see the old home, the old school. And seeing my old school, and one sentence that was said to me from one of the ladies who looked after the school, so you're one of our old girls. So what do you do now? And I was telling her, she said, see, Kampala wasn't that bad after all. We did breed, you know, successful people. And it made me realise, you think, no matter what you go through and the hardship that they were going through, they still were proud to call me one of theirs.
Yes.
And I think, again, as women, you always want to belong. I often get asked, well, you're born in Africa, I have Indian blood running through my veins, I'm British, but I live in Asia, you know, and I split my time, but I spend more time out there because of the businesses. And that fun element is the spirit that comes through. You know, the emotions it evokes, a combination of the laughter and the tears, because I did cry for 8 hours on a flight, all the way from London Heathrow to Kampala. I think, oh my God, I'll go back to Entebbe, and we left it under terrible circumstances. But it was great. Just actually working with Ugandans again was so much fun. Ghana recently, we laughed every night, and I think one of the key things is it's very lonely when you run your own businesses.
Yeah.
You know, there's and I think it's important to build a good network around you. You know, genuine people who will support you. That's one. But the second thing is to laugh.
Yeah.
It's you know, that sense of humour. Things go wrong, and they will go wrong, and they will continue
to laugh and to pick yourself up again.
Yeah.
Amita, there's quite a lot of research about the kind of things that help women to grow businesses or help people to grow businesses and so on, and attitudes to business. And some recent research that's come out from ERC and also I think from a Biz survey that is saying that women tend to grow businesses for a different reason to men. Women go into a business for flexibility, whereas men go in with an attitude for growth in the beginning. There is a transition, but it starts out that women just do it for flexibility. How does that sit with you?
Okay, so I have an academic background in terms of I'm constantly doing courses, so my MBA, my law, my doctorate. So I'd really be interested in the research that has been produced and the analysis and the report from it. I have a slightly different attitude though, in terms of when you ask me how it sits with me. See, I think women think they're going into business for the flexibility, because it sounds lovely, you know, I can work when I want, I can pick up the kids, I can, you know, cook dinner, I can go and have my nails done, and, you know, I'll make it up at the weekend, or in the evenings, or I'll work when everyone else is asleep, because we all go through that. The reality is very different. I think women actually work longer hours in their businesses than men. So that flexibility, in quotes, I don't know the research, I'm not saying this is incorrect. What I'm saying is my viewpoint on it would be slightly different. So that flexibility I think women think they're going into businesses for is probably the growth element that they're looking at, because businesses actually make you grow. Businesses reflect your journey in life. So as you grow as a person, your businesses will grow because you learn from every experience, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I think it's the growth as you grow as an individual, as you grow as a business, that starts giving you the choices, which actually gives you the flexibility. And I think that's probably the end game that women more than men are looking at.
Yes, because it gives you kind of freedom, doesn't it?
Freedom and choices, and you know, we've talked about it. To me, life is about the choices, not the monetary value, not the flexibility. It's the choices that you will get from getting much more done. And women generally, I mean, my life is a list. With the businesses, everything's a list. So, you know, what do we do today? What were the outcomes? And focus on outcomes rather than outputs, because otherwise we produce documents and no real outcomes.
Yes.
So that's what I think.
Yeah, and so a good take on that. Yeah, thank you. Because it can be taken the other way around. That, you know, women are carers and get kind of labelled with it's always that sad story, and it's not, you know, necessarily. But there's a different angle to it. So thank you. This series is about inspirational leaders. And I'm thinking, well, what is a leader? And what do you think, in your terms, what's a leader? For me, a leader is just someone who leads themselves.
Okay, so for me, a leader is somebody who does lead themselves, actually makes things happen, but actually inspires and evokes others to take action for the better.
Mm-hmm.
So a leader is somebody who not only they're not insular. Yeah? They look out for people around them. They sort of like pave the way for others. They're willing to share their knowledge, tacit and explicit knowledge. Not just to keep everything to themselves, and I often say in Asia, sorry to cut that sentence short, I often say, look, I went through setting up my businesses and I learnt the hard way. If there's anything that I could share to stop somebody else going through the pain and, grief that I went through, well, why not? Knowledge isn't given to you for you to keep. It's there to be, shared and to help other people on their part. You know why? Because if they grow, you grow. And I think a good leader is one who knows when to step down and not carry on when things aren't quite there, not happening. Secondly, actually takes people with them and carries that baton, and really does.
And inspires.
Yeah, and guys and pick people up when they're down, because that's when they need you the most. And I think that's really key.
Yeah. So, Amita, thank you. It's been such a lovely conversation this morning, and you are an inspirational leader. You've had a go, you keep going, and I can only see the future keeping on going for you. I'm sure there's loads more businesses to come. So thank you.
Thank you very
for
much,
taking the time
Jenny.
today.
It's been lovely.
Thank you.